And so if you go back to that period and where we are now, you will see that decline as far as the fundamentals of the economy are concerned. And so I was, for example, referring to inflation, which was 54% by the end of 2022.
Yeah.
Today, it is lower, 42%. And we are determined to take it further down to 31% by the end of the year. It's still high. That is not where we want to be, but we are determined to work around it until we reach a single-digit inflation.
How do you intend to do that? Looking exactly at January 2022 and the fact that inflation was about 13.9% at that time, it was a significant jump from 13.9 to about 54% at the end of that same year.
That was last year, yes.
Exactly,
yes.
That's what I mean. And so the question then would be, a lot of Ghanaians are complaining that inflation also affects literally everything on our table, in our pockets, etc. How do you intend to reduce that further down to 31%? And even that will still be considered pretty high for the regular Ghanaian.
Now, if you look at the inflation basket, you will understand why it went to 54%, why it is still high, even though we are working hard to reduce it. Number one, food inflation has dominated our inflation. As we speak today, the latest figure on inflation shows that food inflation is about 54% of the inflation. And why not? Food prices have increased globally because of the problems associated with logistics, because of the difficulty with grains. You know, the Russia-Ukraine grain conflict. You know that India has just said that they won't export rice, anywhere. So these are the reasons. So if you look at, even within the food basket, imported food, cost about 43% of the increase in inflation. And domestic, locally produced food is just about 36%. And so you will see that our inflation is mostly imported, And so we need to be able to increase agricultural productivity and agricultural production. And if you listen to the minister yesterday, government is going to implement an aggressive growth strategy. And one of the focus areas is agriculture, so that we can increase food production in order to further bring inflation down. So this is how we are going to address the issue relating to inflation.
I see. I mean, we'll come back to that issue of, agri, but also the growth, the GDP, because we've revised it downwards even further as against what we had pegged our growth to be at the beginning of the year. And so we're now moving a little lower to 1.5% as against the 2.8% that we had pegged it to be at the beginning of the year. What is accounting for this?
Well, I think it's also important to recognize that since we got the approval of the IMF, we have embarked on what we call fiscal consolidation. This IMF program is mostly about consolidation. And we're supposed to undertake a fiscal adjustment, a very huge fiscal adjustment that borders on revenue and expenditure. And so you want to increase revenue, you also want to control expenditure. And when you control expenditure, it means you are not spending much. When you spend, growth will certainly go up. But when you are reducing spending, it certainly will affect growth. That's what fiscal consolidation is about. For example, from the budget that was presented, we spent 68 billion cedis in the first half of the year against 90 billion cedis as was projected. That's about 26% below what we were projected to spend. And so you are not spending much because of this consolidation. And therefore, you do not expect our growth to increase. So we are just being realistic. And conventional economists will tell you that once we embark on fiscal consolidation, growth will suffer initially. But once you achieve stability, macro stability, which we are working around to achieve, growth will pick up. And that is why we are confident that we should be able to take growth to about 5% by the end of 2026.
So does it mean we're cutting down on growth rate more like? And if that's the case, won't that affect Ghanaians? Because the sectors that we expect to develop or experience some growth will not experience that. And minority even saying that we shouldn't even expect our growth rate to go beyond 1%.
Running an economy is more about trade-offs. There are important trade-offs. For example, we would have wished to spend so much to create the growth. But when you spend so much, as a government, you crowd out the private sector. That is one. When you spend so much, you create inflation. And so if you want to be able to achieve macro stability, you have to be very careful about how much you spend and in which areas you spend. And also the efficiency of spending. And so because of the fiscal consolidation that we are doing, growth is certainly going to suffer. We know that growth will suffer. There may be some unemployment associated with growth, going down or being revised down. But we would have achieved stability that we can rely on to build even higher growth going into the future. And so 1.5% growth for this year and 5% growth by the end of 2026, as we are projecting, shows that we are not going to continue declining. So the decline for now is so necessary because of the fiscal consolidation. But when we have improved on our revenue collection and we begin to spend, not beyond the revenue that we get, because we have increased the size of our revenue, then you can see the growth picking up and recovering strongly to about 5% by the end of 2026.
How do you expect Ghanaians to take this and manage the situation at the moment?
Well, Ghanaians have already sacrificed so much. What we went through under COVID and what we've gone through under the influence of the Ukraine-Russia war and what we are currently going through is enormous sacrifice. And we continue to bear with Ghanaians, and we continue to count on the confidence of the Ghanaian people in their government. If you were doing so bad as we did, 2-3 years before, and you have seen signs of recovery, you have seen inflation improving, you have seen the exchange rate also improving as far as depreciation is concerned. For example, by November 2022, the cedi had depreciated by about 54%. Today, year to date, from January to date, the depreciation is about 20%. But actually, the depreciation has been much lower. From February to July, it's been 1.8%. January was 20% plus. February to July has been 1.8%. So there is relative stability in our currency relative to the US dollar, but also to other global currencies. And so when you see these things happening to an economy, then you know that it has gone around the cycle. Economies are also cyclical. You reach a peak and then you start to decline. And so we are going to continue to ensure that we are on that decline phase as far as the economic indicators are concerned, in order for Ghanaians to feel it in their lives.
Let's talk about the Bank of Ghana and the figures that they have put out there as monies that they have lost, more like about 60 billion Ghana cedis and more. The concern then is that this is supposed to be a lend of last resort. Now, if they are declaring this level of losses, then that affects our economy in totality. And the blame is being put at the doorstep of government, that it is government's fault that Bank of Ghana has literally been declared insolvent at this point. What do you say to that?
Well, the Bank of Ghana certainly will speak for themselves. But to just give you a context, banks do lose, okay? And as I speak to you, the Bank of England has lost about 150 billion pounds sterling that the British government has to come in to support them. So they do lose. And there may be reasons why they lose. We embarked on the DDEP.
Okay.
And you know that the DDEP has created liquidity problems, as well as solvency problems in the local banking industry. Government is aware of that. And this is why I said earlier that economics is about trade-offs, okay? And so we needed this DDEP to help with debt sustainability. But it has created some other problems. And we knew it would create problems. But the problems they will create will not be worse than the problems we averted as a result of doing the DDEP. Because these problems it has caused, we can address them. And this is why the government is setting up the Financial Sector Stability Fund, with an initial commitment of $750 million US dollars to support the insolvent banks and also to support liquidity in order to bring the local banking system to a stronger position so that they can continue to lend. And this is part of our growth strategy. Because the DDEP has affected, lending to the private sector has also slowed. And so through the Financial Sector Stability Fund, we are able to bring the banks to a stronger position that they are able to lend more to the private sector, and then it will have impact on growth through production, manufacturing, etc., etc. And so this is why I'm saying that banks do lose. And the Bank of Ghana certainly has made some losses. But we are happy to support the Bank of Ghana to be able to recover,
In what
just
way?
as other governments are doing to support their central banks as well as their commercial banks.
In what way?
Yeah, of course, there are so many ways, which I don't want to preempt, because the Bank of Ghana is certainly in discussions with government. And then we could do this through equity.
Okay.
Okay, that is one way, but there are so many other ways. They could also launch what we call recapitalization bonds and then raise funds to become financially stronger. But I don't want to preempt the discussions that are currently ongoing between the Bank of Ghana.
I do understand, but does it not worry you then that if you look at the statements from the Bank of Ghana, and of course their financial statements exactly, and how much they've even spent on foreign and domestic travel and motor maintenance and running between 2021 and 2022, there's a stark difference. So let's take foreign and domestic travel, for example. As at 2021, they spent about 28.17 million on that. Now, this year, they're telling us that 97.437 million has been spent on travels alone at a time when we're told that things are difficult for us generally. And of course, we need to tighten our belts as Ghanaians. But this is how much our Bank of Ghana is spending. Now, motor vehicle maintenance as well, it jumped from 61.510 million in 2021 to 131.586 million in 2022. Are we really feeling the same as, you know, the people who are also spending at Bank of Ghana when we're told that we need to cut down on expenditure as much as possible?
But I think you know that Bank of Ghana is independent of the government. I do
understand that, yes.
And therefore, to the extent that you want to interrogate their financials, Parliament is well placed to do this, okay? I mean, I don't want to speak for the bank. I don't know the happenings in the bank. And so the appropriate forum will be for Parliament, because Bank of Ghana is accountable to Parliament. And they do appear before Parliament.
Yes,
I'm a member of the Finance Committee, and they do appear before us. We scrutinize their financials. And so you don't want to take this on the face value of it until you have interrogated them and gotten the answers behind those numbers. Otherwise, you'll be speculating.
Okay, well, let's talk about the independent power producers. And of course, the threats out there, they feel like they've been deceived by governments, more like if you listen to exactly what they're saying. So they're threatening to shut down. Why did you fail to honor, as a government, the agreement the first time that you met them a month ago or so?
This is news to me, because
is it news?
I'm not aware of any.
You're not aware that they're threatening to shut down?
Yes.
You're not aware?
I'm not aware.
How so?
Yeah.
But there was a meeting a month ago.
I think if you want to refer to the problems between the IPPs and the ECG and government for that matter, yes, we can discuss. I mean, I do recall some time ago they were threatening to shut down, but I can't remember recently any threat to shut down, because we are discussing with them, we are addressing the challenges, you know, and some of these challenges are legacy challenges, okay? We're talking about the arrears, the legacy arrears, you know, which did not start in the last 6 years. The legacy arrears have accumulated over the last 15, 20 years. And so you just cannot use a year or two to address the legacy challenges. As of the end of 2022, the legacy arrears stood at $1.7 billion. But all is not standing in the name of IPPs.
Okay.
The IPPs is about $1.1 billion. Yesterday, I heard a figure, 2.3 billion from the IPP chamber, and I challenged them. Because if it was $1.7 billion at the end of last year, of which IPPs was 1.1 billion, when did that rise to $2.3 billion?
So it's not, that figure is wrong?
Yeah, it's wrong. And we have approached them with an offer to restructure the debt. Of course, they have their positions on this, but we'll continue to engage. Meanwhile, what we are committed to do is not to build new arrears.
Okay.
And this government is committed to that. We've negotiated with them. We're going to make monthly payments to them amounting to $43 million for 6 IPPs.
Okay.
And this month, as I speak to you, we've already transferred $43 million to the IPPs. And they've all acknowledged receipts.
Okay.
ECG is going to continue that every month. And so we don't accumulate new arrears. We're going to be current, you know, on our payments to the IPPs, because we want to provide energy security. Because that is also fundamental to our growth strategy. Without energy, there cannot be economic growth. And so it is not in our interest for IPPs to shut down.
Okay.
That is why, once they provide the service, we are going to be paying for it. But you know, why these debts have accumulated is because our opponents, when they were in government, signed too many agreements for power that we didn't need. And that is what brought the lexicon excess capacity that we have to pay for. This excess capacity, which we don't need, are also backed by take or pay arrangements. Whether you use them or you don't use them, you have to pay. Now, who is going to pay for that? This government did not want the people of Ghana to pay for the recklessness of our opponents, the previous government. And this is why they are not factored in the tariffs. If we factor the excess capacity, which are take or pay contracts into the tariffs, look, electricity tariffs will go beyond the roof. And the people of Ghana will suffer the consequences. Economic growth will suffer because industry will not be able to afford electricity. Now, who pays for that? These are the resources, the monies that have accumulated into debts, the arrears that we are talking about. Otherwise, we will not have arrears. 70% of the arrears in the energy sector are due to excess capacity payments. So we have negotiated with the IPPs to pay for only energy delivered. In other words, we have negotiated to defer the payment of the excess capacity, which will be paid anyway, but as revenue collection improves by ECG.
Okay. And they will be paid by the same Ghanaians,
yes,
eventually.
The same Ghanaians, but it's much better today. If we were to put excess capacity payments on Ghanaians today.
But even now, Ghanaians are complaining about how much they're paying.
Exactly. So you can imagine how much it would have been if
so
Ghanaians were to be asked to pay for the excess capacity.
So that means that tariffs will continue to increase over time because we need to pay.
Tariff may not necessarily increase because you are not going to pay the deferred excess capacity at a go. It's not going to be lump sum.
Okay.
It certainly will be spread over a longer period. We are also negotiating to reduce the cost of generating power, and so that eventually we will be able to contain it. And the effect on Ghanaians will also be minimal.
What time frame are we looking at?
Oh, we're looking, in fact, we will not pay for excess capacity for the next 5 years.
Okay.
While as we negotiate to reduce the cost, we are negotiating with fuel suppliers, for example, gas, to reduce the cost of gas, which is an input cost in power generation. We are negotiating with the IPPs to reduce the capacity charges, which are also very high. And so all this will culminate into tariffs being contained.
Okay.
And at the same time, when ECG has improved on its revenue collection, we'll be able to assure that we'll have energy security because we'll be able to pay for the power delivered to us by the IPPs.
Are you not worried that Ghanaians are still complaining that life has become a bit too difficult for them in terms of tariffs and everything else in between?
We appreciate that. We appreciate those concerns. And as a government, we are not insensitive. And this is why I've just given you the example of the excess capacity. Is it an insensitive government that will go and negotiate with IPPs to say that let's don't pay the excess capacity today? Let's defer it to the next 5 years.
Okay.
So that we can reduce the burden of electricity costs on the people of Ghana. Is that an insensitive government? No. And so we bear with the circumstances. They are difficult times, but we are not sitting down and doing nothing.
Fuel prices are going up by 9% today, according to COPEC.
Well, but fuel prices would have gone higher than that.
Higher than the 9%?
Yes. You know the Gold for Oil program we initiated, it has helped a lot. If you want to follow the international market, as far as the movement in fuel prices are concerned, it will be much higher than what is in Ghana today.
So gold for oil is the reason?
As I speak to you, while global prices of petroleum products are increasing, some other countries are declaring stock out. And when I talk about stock out, they don't even have the products. And so if you are faced with having shortage of products, and have an uninterrupted supply of the product, even if the price is a little higher, what will you go for? Countries like Senegal have declared stock out. Gambia, countries around us, including Ivory Coast. Ghana doesn't have interruption as far as fuel supply is concerned. Even Nigeria here, there are long queues there. We don't experience those. It simply shows our efficiency in the management of the petroleum sector.
Is that really the case? I mean, there are some taxes that, drivers especially have asked constantly to be taking off, the cost of fuel so that it reduces the price of fuel. And even up until now, I remember that about 2 years ago, they asked for some 6 taxes to be scrapped or at least reduced. And that wasn't done. When it was reduced eventually, it was even totally different aspects of the taxes that were touched. And so they're saying that we were even expecting that even with this mid-year budget review, at least some of these taxes would have been touched to reduce it further. COPEC is also saying that we're expecting that government can help us reduce the prices of fuel by taking off some of these taxes. We're not seeing that happening.
So if you look at this budget, the budget did not introduce new taxes. It also shows how sensitive we are. in these difficult times, we did not introduce new taxes. What we are doing is rather to improve on compliance, to improve on the efficiency of collection in order to still meet our revenue target. And the GRA has been doing so well. You know that this half of the year, GRA has exceeded its target. They collected 49 billion cedis against 48 billion cedis. And you know what? This is about 50% improvement over same time last year. Okay, of course, we had new taxes that were brought on, but it is also as a result of the efficiency of collection and improved compliance. But if we come back to the oil, the fuel, before we took over power, taxes constituted 74% of our fuel prices. Okay, and every country raises revenue through petroleum taxes. But when it is too much, that is where we have problems. So it was about 74% of the total pump price. Today, it is just about 24%. 24% because of the sensitivity that the government has attached to petroleum products.
They say even that 24-25% is still pretty high.
So if that one is taken out, then we are saying that government should not raise revenue at all. And we are the same people that are asking for electricity, that are asking for roads, that are asking for water supply. Government must raise revenue. Government must generate revenue.
And there are other ways to generate revenue?
Yes, but government, of course, including petroleum prices. And that is why, to be sensitive and ensure that the impact is not so huge on the Ghanaian, we have money to reduce the taxes within the petroleum pricing system. I'm sure you know that excise taxes on petroleum products were abolished by this government. We reduced the special petroleum taxes from 17.5% to about 13%. And we've converted the special petroleum tax from ad valorem tax to specific tax, so that when the price of petroleum products increase, the tax is still the same amount. That is what we mean by specific tax.
Okay.
If it is ad valorem tax, as prices increase, the tax amount will also increase. We have done all this. Many people may not know. And this is why we've been able to reduce the tax component within the petroleum pump prices to 24%. That's a sensitive government.
Is that really?
Yes. That's a sensitive government. And you can ask COPEC. COPEC will confirm this.
No, COPEC is the same one that's saying that you need to cut down on some of these taxes as well.
Of course, if COPEC had its chance, we won't have 1 cedi tax on petroleum products.
That's not what they're saying.
No, I'm saying that if they have that chance, we won't have 1 cedi tax on petroleum product price. But government must raise revenue. And this is why we continue to appreciate the sacrifices of the people of Ghana, that we have to own our problems and we'll have to own the solutions to these problems. And one major way to own the solutions is to be able to contribute, pay our taxes.
Okay.
So that government can have the revenue to provide the basic services to us.
Ghanaians are sacrificing, but they're saying they don't see the same kind of sacrifice or level of sacrifice on the part of government.
Well, I mean, I just indicated to you on the expenditure side what has happened in the first half of the year. You are supposed to spend about 90 billion and you spend 68 billion.
That sacrifice?
That's a big sacrifice. Government is controlling spending. Okay? But at the same time, government is providing the services. We have kept the lights on. Okay? It is not by accident. In spite of the huge debts that have accumulated in the energy sector, the lights are on.
Okay.
We should find out why. It's the revenue that we generate, the taxes that we pay.
I see. Interesting. What is happening to NAPCO? And of course, we spoke to them just about a week ago. They are still complaining that a number of them have still not received their allowances as far back as 7 months. 67,000, yes.
I'm not seized with the facts on NAPCO. I don't have information on NAPCO, so I'm not able to comment on this.
You have no idea about it, so you cannot speak to it, because about 400 million is owed them.
Yeah, I don't speak to it.
You don't speak to NAPCO?
No, because I don't have the information on NAPCO.
Okay, but you have information on New Start?
on...
You start.
You start, of course. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, the concern then is if NAPCO beneficiaries have not been able to receive their money, and we're saying we're investing, because if you look at the budget, again, the media budget yesterday that was read, it says that about 26,626 persons nationwide have received some business advisory support services for this. Now, the concern then is that how are we spending on a whole new initiative when there are other people that we started an initiative with that were yet to pay? Why are we investing in a totally different initiative when we have not sorted out these young people who have worked for many months and have still not received their allowances?
I know that NAPCO program is supposed to have ended. And so if you're talking about allowances, that may be contingent allowances, and certainly they will be paid. But when we're talking about You Start, it's a new program, okay? And it's part of our growth strategy to empower the youth, to build the entrepreneurial spirit in the youth.
But you're breaking down one aspect of the youth if you're not paying them the allowances to empower another set of youth.
But I've just said that NAPCO is supposed to have ended. So if you have contingent allowances, they certainly will be paid.
When?
People go on retirement and they are still paid their contingent allowances and salaries. But I'm saying that You Start is a completely new program, and which has a different objective from NAPCO. Because we are trying to build entrepreneurship. NAPCO was not like that.
Yeah.
And as I speak to you, I'm sure you also know that a lot of NAPCO beneficiaries have been absorbed into many other institutions like GRA, et cetera, et cetera. But You Start is new. And we are doing this because we want to also address youth employment, not through transfer payment, that people just come and work and get allowances, but through empowering them with the skills, productive skills, that they can create businesses, that we can incubate these businesses, and that they can be part of our growth story. That is what You Start is seeking to do. And we are seeking to even put more money into You Start, because we've done the pilots and it's been very successful. Some people have doubled their profits since they were supported, with You Start money. And we think that this is the time to deploy You Start nationwide in order for us to get the entrepreneurial effect that the Ghanaian youths are imbued with, and then the consequent effect on the growth of the economy.
I see. Well, since you say you're not too versed in the area of NAPCO, maybe I'll leave it at that point and we'll wait for further details on You Start especially. But one other question, and this is from a viewer, says that ask about the E-levy and COVID-19 levy, and why are we still being charged for a disease that's been kept, and for electricity and water that was never received by all Ghanaians?
Well, I think that E-levy is not doing as well as we wanted. As a result of that, in this mid-year, the E-levy projections have been revised down. We're expected to be achieving 2.1 billion cedis from E-levy. It's been revised down by about 1 billion cedis. But we need to be able to enhance the collection, because it's a big opportunity out there. Online businesses are very important sources of revenue for many countries, and Ghana is no exception. And so E-levy is going to be enhanced. We will make it more efficient in order for us to collect more. But another reason it hasn't performed well was because of the amendments made to the E-levy Act in Parliament. We were hoping to reduce the rate from 1.5 to 1%, but also the threshold. We wanted to keep it, but Parliament reduced the rate and removed the threshold, and that affected the inflows from E-levy. But we are seeking to make it better in order for us to generate more revenue, because it's an important source of revenue to government, and we can't underestimate its potential for supporting the development of our economy.
So we're going to continue to pay?
Yes, we will. We need it. We even need to look at other ways of enhancing online taxes, because there's so much business going out there. And it shouldn't be possible for only few people to be paying the taxes while many people are enjoying the services provided by the government. So we need to be able to expand the tax net. And online, business tax is one area. For example, what E-levy is trying to do.
The Ghanaians are saying they don't think they should be paying COVID levy, sanitation levy. We're paying that, but we're not even seeing any level of improvement in terms of sanitation.
We want our cities to be dirty.
Is it not dirty at the moment?
It would have been dirtier, more dirtier.
So this is what, an improvement?
This because of the sanitation levy. In fact, I used to be the mayor of Tamale during the Kufuor era, where we had the sanitation fund. Tamale was voted the cleanest city in Ghana on 3 occasions. And this was because of the sanitation fund. Now, the sanitation fund ceased to exist when the NDC came to power, and our cities became dirtier. The introduction of the sanitation levy is to bring the sanitation fund idea back in order to provide the resources to pay contractors.
The president told us that
cities.
Accra was going to be the cleanest city.
It's better than it would have been if we didn't have the resources, yes.
At the moment?
It's better than it would have been.
Because you're collecting the sanitation levy.
It's not all that rosy.
We're
we
not
haven't
seeing
gotten
any
to where we
improvement.
want to get to, but there is significant improvement on
How
what
so?
it would have been.
Based on what exactly are you saying there's significant improvement? Because we're all seeing what it looks like in the city and the rest of the country.
And I don't think that,
no, but we clearly see what's happening on the streets. Are you saying that because you started collecting again,
yeah, no, but that is
so the city is cleaner now?
I just told you that because we now have the levy,
okay,
which is providing the resources to pay the contractors, okay? And I know that we pay the contractors, unless you want to say that we pay them for no work being done.
Are they working?
And that is why I'm asking you,
on
what basis will you say that it is
Are
not
they working?
improving? They are working. If you go to town, you will see them working.
So are you satisfied with the level
We are not
of
satisfied.
cleanliness in
I've
the
just
country?
said that we haven't gotten to where we should be.
Okay.
But there certainly has been some improvement.
I see.
And we will continue to work
all right,
until we get there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure.
On the show. We've been speaking to Dr. Amin Adam. He is the Minister of State in charge of Finance and Economic Planning. We have sports, we have entertainment coming up. So please don't go anywhere. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.